Greetings, it is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. We were diving into FX abilities, or if you're from a 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons player, spells, and similar things, anything of the like, they're FX abilities in D20 Modern. So we talked about arcane spells and generalizations about spells last time. Today we're handling divine spells. So there are some major differences in the very way that divine spells are defined. As much as an arcane spellcaster tends to master study to learn what it is, a divine spellcaster uses their pure faith to channel their energy and grant themselves spells in a way. They use faith in order to cast their magic. Divine spells also are much less destructive, much less flashy, much less disruptive than arcane spells tend to be. The major limitation that exists because of this is, yes, we're not getting that big destructive, flashy, disruptive thing going on. But divine spells can do something very great that arcane spells cannot do at all. Heal. A divine spell could heal someone's wounds. Now, just like as with the arcane spellcasting classes, you have to look to divine spellcasting classes, in particular, in this case, the Acolyte, to figure out how many spell slots you have to fill up, how many spells per day I'm going to be casting once I've prepared my spells properly. Now, in some ways, prepping divine spells is just like prepping arcane spells. There are some very large similarities. The big thing that's different, though, is I don't need time in order to memorize my divine spells. In arcane spells, I'd have to be well rested, get that 8 hours of rest. I don't need that as divine. What I need is I choose a certain time of day, some point in the day that I will be meditating and regain my divine spells. Now, the sheer fact is, most of the time, this is some kind of daily event. It could be something like dawn or dusk, noon. Various other events could exist that you could effectively put it that this is my daily time. I'm going to be memorizing my spells. It needs to be a quiet place where I can get my meditation undisturbed for an hour. Just like with an arcane caster, it takes me an hour to get it. The important thing to mention here is that because of the nature of this, as I have a certain time, if circumstances mean that I can't meditate right then, like, let's say I chose noon. Noon's my time. I can't meditate at noon. I need to meditate as soon as I possibly can. If I miss any opportunity to meditate in there, I can't memorize my spells until the next day. I have to wait till the next noon. But as soon as the opportunity comes up, I start that meditation, I'm fine with it. It's if I squander that time, then I lose it. Now, as I said, it takes an hour to memorize it, and it has to be a peaceful environment. And just like with arcane spells, I don't have to memorize all of them at once. I only have to memorize what I wish to. But that first time I initially memorized it is the point in time of the day I could abandon old spells, get new ones, and similar of the like. After that, I cannot do that until I reach that point in time in the day of my initial meditation. So I cannot abandon spells to redo them, even if they are ones that I had prepped before this meditation session, and similar. The only exception to any of this is spontaneously casting cure or inflict spells. I can do that regardless of whatever I've done. As long as I have the slot open, I can convert it to this. Now, no spellbook is needed for your divine spellcaster. They don't need something like an arcane spellcaster. But, like the arcane spellcaster, I can only prep spells of an appropriate level to what I can cast. If I can cast 2nd level spells, that's what I can prep. If I cannot cast 3rd level spells, I can't prepare them. I don't have that ability. Now, much like with arcane spellcasters, if I've cast a spell in the last 8 hours, it counts against my total amount of spells I can gain back once I've gotten my meditation. It's counting against my ability to regain them. I have to have had that 8-hour time period between each of these spell slots in order to regain them, to replace them. Now, if I'm a good Acolyte, that is when I have the option to spontaneously cast a cure spell. What does this mean? I take a spell I had previously prepared. I remove that spell from my spell list, and I instead, in place of it, cast a cure spell of the same or lower level to what that spell was. So if I spontaneously get rid of a second level spell, I can cast the cure spell of the second level or the first level. Now if I'm evil, I can do the same with inflict spells. Get rid of a spell, cast an inflict spell. Regardless if it's inflict or cure, once I do this conversion, once I do this substitution, I treat the cure or inflict spell as if I had memorized it all along. I treat it as if it had been one of those spells that I had prepared ahead of time, even though I technically didn't. I got rid of the spell I prepared ahead of time for this, but I'm acting like I didn't. Now, much like arcane spells and arcane spell casting, there is a divine spell casting that you can write down. There's divine writing that you can have. And just like with arcane spell casting, you can decipher it. If you have spellcraft, you can decipher divine writings just the same way. The big thing here is that I cannot cast a spell of the divine source type from a divine scroll as a divine spell without having actually divine spellcasting ability. So if I have a scroll with divine writing that is the divine form of this spell, I have to be divine caster in order to use it. If I know the arcane version of this spell, I'm out of luck. Even if I've deciphered it and read it, I know it's the divine version of it. Still can't do it. I need to have divine spellcasting in order to do it. Now, when you gain a level in a divine spellcasting class, you gain access to some more slots, and whatever spells you choose can be of any of that spell level. I don't have to have a spell book. I'm not doing anything special to memorize it. The entire divine spellcasting list of that level is effectively my spell book I can choose from to put into my slots. I don't have to memorize or have anything written down. Every time I prepare it, I get to look at the full lists of divine spells and choose out of those lists what I'm filling in. Unlike that acolyte who might have some better versatility in explosions, but they have to have a book that has the options they have. Now, let's talk about the spells that are listed in the book. Now, there is, of course, a list of spells in the book. There's a couple different lists of them. For one thing, you have to look, when you're looking at some of these books and their information that they have, there will be some that will reference another spell. It will say, go look at this spell. These layered spells, you're going to have to look at to the top layer, the one that's saying, go reference here. This one will give you some information. It probably won't provide you with all the information about the spell, all the components, all the targets, anything like that. It will only provide what's appropriate for this spell. Anything that's not listed is taken from the spell below it. You're not replacing the stuff that's up here on the one that you just read. You're just filling in any blanks from the one from before it. It's its own spell. It has its own rules. And this might be layered a couple of times. So you might have some information here, followed by some information here, followed by the rest of the information here to get this spell up here if all three of these are layered. You can get multiple layers like this that they will plop on top of each other. Now, another important distinction we're going to list when we're talking about these things is hit dice. If something says hit dice, it's the same as character level. Character level is equal to hit dice. Hit dice is a reference for certain races and creatures that have more hit dice naturally before they would gain any kind of class levels. If you're looking at that thing alone, you look at its hit dice as its class level. Same as your class level is equal to your hit dice if some kind of language mentions hit dice in one of the spells. There is an exception that functions after this, is if I'm something that has hit dice, and then I take some class levels, well, both of these combined add together to figure out my total class level or my total hit dice. Because those are the same still, it's just that I'd have to add these two numbers together if I have both of them to figure out my total for either of them. Now when we talk about spells, its power is derived from your class level. Your class level tells you how much power I'm able to throw into this spell. Sometimes there might be some kind of creature that has spellcasting but does not list a caster level, or does not have a class that gives a caster level. In this case, this creature with this spell uses its hit dice as its caster level. That's the way that you can figure out its power level to throw in there. Also, you might find some language that will mention creature. Creature is equivalent to character. Character is equivalent to creature. So either, again, these two languages are interchangeable. Now, there are two types of lists in the book, now that we've gone over the basic information about these lists. The first one is by class and alphabetical. This is and by class level. So you look at your level of your spells, you look alphabetically through that level, and you go through your class this way. If you're an acolyte or a mage, it separates them out. It makes it easy for you to reference that, oh, I need a first level spell. I need a second level spell. I need a third level spell. I can easily reference which are which. Each of these has a short description of what the spell is. If you want to learn more about it, or read up more about it, there is a full listing of the full entries of all the spells in alphabetical order for every spell. So these are only sorted by alphabet for the rest of these, but it gives every bit of information about them so you can go reference them and see what that spell does. So, that's it for this week, though. So I went over divine spells, and I did talk about the listings of spells in the book. Divine spells, of course, being the sister to arcane spells. But big thing about them, healing. In the next episode, though, we're going to talk about yet another type of special ability, psionics. Basically being psychic and having mind powers. So rather than arcane studied powers, divine spells created by belief, I have mind powers. And we'll talk all about them, and maybe even move into FX items, which are, of course, what we would call, in Dungeons & Dragons term, magic items. But, anyway, I hope you're having a great day. If you have any stories about D20 Modern that you want to share in the comments, or perhaps even a modern game that you've played, please leave in the comments below. Love to hear the stories from you. But, until the next time, I bid you farewell.